Get good at those.
Good morning, ladies. Here we are again.
Hi.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good.
A pleasure as always.
Oh, wait. And I bid adieu. Like, what was that? Oh, yeah, that was the new way that Kim was greeting people.
Was it?
Yeah.
That's
That and a
like you're greeting
curtsy.
instead of handshakes or, high fives. I go, hey.
Yeah,
It's like the inverted aggressive jazz hand.
it is.
You have your jazz hands. I have my howdy.
I just sit here and say, what's up?
So what are we talking about today, friends?
The continuum between, sympathy, compassion, empathy. Am I missing one in there?
Apathy.
Apathy.
Apathy at the front end.
Apathy at the first.
Yes.
Apathy is like, meh.
Yeah.
All right, let's discuss.
Okay. We'll define them first.
Okay. So if we were talking about, or to me, I should say, if we're talking about apathy, apathy is just having no response, having no emotional connectivity to something. Just kind of being like, pass the salt. When somebody's sharing something with you that is really emotive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you can break it down, and I forget if it's Greek or Latin, but when you have a or an in front of anything, it negates it. And pathos or pathy means suffering. So I do not see your suffering.
Right.
Ooh, isn't that smart? Yes.
Studied hard for them GREs and tests. I know all my prefixes and suffixes.
And
was that jazz hands with spirit fingers? I just need some clarity.
And snaps. You got it all, the combo package.
It's a combo. So what I also think about with apathy is that apathy is the opposite of love, the opposite of hate, the opposite of anything that we might feel for somebody, that we know that we have fallen out of something with somebody when we react to their pain with apathy.
Right. It's like, I don't care enough to hate you. I don't care enough to love you. Like, I just don't care.
Like, I got nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what about sympathy?
Where's Stephanie? Where's she doing?
Where are you going?
Well,
she's Googling prefixes.
Well, no, what you guys had asked like to define, and you know how we love using Alex Katahakis's, what is it called? The Mirror of Intimacy. And she has all of these brilliant quotes from people. And I was going to read a quote that people have said, like on Apathy
like
by Philip James Bailey.
Please do.
And he says,
let's hear it.
I cannot love as I have loved, and yet I know not why. It is the one great woe of life to feel all feeling die.
Oh, that's so sad.
I know, that is so sad.
But that's how you know when a relationship is over and it has run its course, is that apathy when they come to you and they're begging and pleading and whatever it is for another chance, and you're kind of like, meh.
Yeah.
Done. I got to go now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think about some of the clients that we've worked with where they've just endured hurt after hurt after hurt, that they've just kind of walled themselves off and are no longer wanting or desiring vulnerability and connectivity.
And that's exactly what apathy is, right? It's that lack of any connectivity to the other person.
Right.
Right. So is apathy a bad thing then, or can it have healthy applications?
I don't think it can be healthy. It's a defense mechanism. It's something, sometimes it keeps you from being hurt over and over and over and over and over again.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a great question to ponder.
Yeah, it is. What about sympathy?
Sympathy. Discuss while I find it.
Okay, look. For me, sympathy is the ability to know that somebody's feeling something, to understand somebody's feeling about something. Say, I understand that you're feeling sad, or I understand that you're feeling whatever. It's to know that, to understand how somebody is experiencing something.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why they have a sympathy card section at the grocery store or the CVS pharmacy instead of like an empathy or a compassion card section. It's that I can recognize that you are going through something here.
And that's why we always refer to that great Brene Brown video, right? With the bear and the deer, and, where she's like, and how sympathy always begins, yeah, well, at least, blah, blah, blah. And so how that's a sympathetic comment versus an empathetic comment.
And the silver lining that they do, let's try to look for, I lost my job. Well, at least now you can go find a new one. That's that sympathetic. You want a sandwich?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So interestingly enough, I might have overlooked it, but the Mirror of Intimacy book does not have a quote on sympathy in there.
Wow.
I know.
Interesting. Well, what about empathy? Oh, I'm sorry.
I was gonna Google my prefix because I get sim and M confused.
What were you going to say, Stephanie? I just cut you off.
No, I was thinking, I thought we were moving into compassion. So I was all jazzed because she has a
Oh,
quote
no.
from one of my favorite people.
We got to do empathy first.
Yes. So empathy. And
So
again, I'm just pulling the quotes.
Where are you, Allie, while she's looking?
Oh, sorry. I was Googling the prefix for sim, which is interesting because sympathy, SYM, means together or with. And it talks about symbiosis, like the way plants and animals live together.
Yeah.
But when I think of empathy, I think of feeling with. So sympathy, right. I like our definition that we just came up with, where it's acknowledgement of someone's feeling, but not necessarily the connected type. Because in that Brene Brown video that we love so much, she says that empathy drives connection and sympathy is disconnecting.
Right.
Right.
So.
And there's places for both of that, and there are relationships where both of those things are needed.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, a partner healing from trauma, and when their partner shows empathy with what their addiction or what the infidelity has had on them, just that's what they're craving, right? Is when their partner is able to empathize with what has been going on in their life and the pain.
One of the things that I always remember, another Brene Brown thing, can y'all tell that we like Brene?
We love her.
Love her.
One of the things that she said, and I use this a lot, is what is the antidote to empathy? And the antidote to empathy is anger.
Right.
So if I'm leaning in and I'm feeling with you and I'm sitting with you and you turn around and take my head off, or your response to me is just continually pushing on me and pushing me back and responding with anger at me, I'm not going to be able to have much more empathy for you. So in the place with the partner and the addict, if the addict is able to find some empathy and connect in, and the partner is still so angry that they can't allow for that person to move in, then you find this like kind of hard spot that they butt heads at.
Mm-hmm. So we're talking about empathy now? Did I miss it? Did we switch?
What?
Empathy. We're talking about empathy now? Okay, cool. Sorry.
Where did you think we were?
I don't know. I thought we were somewhere in the middle, but now we're definitely talking about empathy.
Definitely in empathy.
Definitely talking. I'm sure people are empathizing with this conversation.
We are solidly in the empathy department right now.
Got it. Got it. So I guess to add to that, since we are talking about empathy, going back to that Brene Brown video about the bears, that being empathetic is a vulnerable choice because I have to be able to connect with something inside of me that deeply recognizes what it is that you're going through. And just in that little shared, what she calls the sacred space. And I agree that it is completely sacred.
It is.
And one of the hardest things too is that for a partner, and I know that we talk a lot about partners and addicts, but for a partner to need that empathy, right, to have their story recognized and heard, is one of the last things that develops for an addict in recovery.
Yeah.
So that it's bittersweet when it happens. And then even for an addict to have empathy for themselves, right, to really look at their journey in its entirety and to bear witness to it, to really empathize what each developmental stage that child, that adolescent, that young adult, that current adult went through.
Yeah.
Which is why we love our Russian dolls here.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Because we use them. Kim's thinking, I see the hamster on the wheel.
I know, I was just going to say, Kim's got something.
Yeah. I was just wondering, what are your thoughts on, there's this big trend that I see a lot on social media and a lot of the psychology profiles, that kind of thing, where people are empaths. What are your thoughts on somebody who is an empath or identifies as an empath, or maybe not on the person, but on that idea that somebody is an empath?
I think there are really sensitive individuals out there. I think that there are people that definitely take on struggles of others and traumas of others. I start to get into that realm of like, well, how like, where are your boundaries? Like, how do you protect yourself in all of this?
Mm-hmm.
Those are my thoughts.
I wonder if there's not some empathy fatigue that goes on for some people.
Yeah.
mean, you're kind of carrying around everybody's stuff.
Right. I think, there's a couple different animals, like species on the planet. There's a couple different ones that are wired for empathy. Dogs, dolphins, humans, probably some higher thinking, like elephants and things like that. But just because we're wired for it, like a superhuman power, doesn't mean we have to keep it throttled down all of the time and, boundaryless feel what everybody is feeling, because compassion fatigue or empathy fatigue, like you're saying, Kim, is totally real.
Yeah. And I also, when I have somebody that I'm working with who talks a lot about being an empath, I often will question, just to clarify, and it's not an accusatory thing, just what purpose is that serving you? And are you dealing with your own stuff, or are you dealing with everybody else's stuff? Because sometimes it's a mistaken, maybe it's not, I don't know how to express this. It's not that it's not a real thing, but it's also a way for me to focus on everybody around me instead of focusing on me.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's a way of deferring my own work.
Right. Because when we start to focus on ourselves, I mean, that's when the real work happens, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So compassion.
Oh, here's my quote on compassion, and it's from one of my most favorite people ever, Pema Chodron.
Okay.
And so I know I have my pocket Pema over here on my desk.
Pema.
Exactly.
That's her theme song.
That is. So she's fantastic, and I love her. And her quote is, "Only when we know our own darkness well can we bear present with the darkness of others. Compassion becomes real when we recognize our shared humanity."
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
She's so wise.
So what is the innate difference between compassion and the other three, though?
The innate difference of compassion and the other three?
Yeah.
Well, it's starkly different from apathy, right? To have compassion for something, to really not just sit with, but really feel with and acknowledge. I mean, that is so textured and so rich and so 180 from apathy.
Yeah.
And 180 from sympathy.
I also think I tend to look at compassion too as being a step even past empathy, where you're taking action in some way. So whether or not you're hooking somebody up with a resource, like, I don't know, that might be some way to show compassion, but a lot of times compassion is kindness. And that step might be understanding and getting underneath the layers of what somebody's experiencing. But compassion is, to me, feels more like I feel for you, but I also want to do something.
Right. It's that next actionable step of wanting to help be part of the solution. Not necessarily in a rescuing, caretaking way,
right,
but in a way that's like, I've felt where you're at. I get it. Let's move forward together.
Right.
Agreed.
And give, like, the teaching someone to fish kind of model, right? Let's give somebody something and that's going to help them have the tools so that they can help themselves. And it's more of even if it's helping somebody understand their situation, but compassion is really a kindness.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I agree.
Compassion fatigue.
Real.
Yeah. What do we do about that?
Real. Across the board, I think. I mean, especially in a time right now, right? When we're under such oddity and change.
And the
struggle.
suffering of so many people is just so much on display, with stats of people in hospitals and, and that's just talking about COVID-19 and all the struggles that people are having from that. It's hard not to feel at like a painful amount sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and I think with compassion fatigue too, we're giving grace, we're giving kindness, we're giving our time, sometimes we're giving of ourselves. And if we're not putting it back in, then we just end up feeling depleted, all for a good cause. No doubt, but we feel depleted. And so we have to remember to take care of ourselves, because that compassion fatigue is super real. And even giving grace to everybody around you, you've got to give grace to yourself too.
Absolutely.
Right. All of these words, apathy, sympathy, empathy, and compassion, can be turned inward. you know,
Well, they need to be.
they need to be. I think people think that they're very relational things, but like you can have a relationship with yourself.
That's
Yeah.
primary.
And you can have a close relationship with somebody, and there are some parts of their life that you can feel compassion for, and some parts of their struggle that you might empathize with, and some that you might just kind of go, yeah, this isn't my thing. But you can experience all of these in one relationship. It just depends on, you know, whatever is going on for you. But they're all appropriate at appropriate times. We just don't want to live in one of them all the time.
Right. For yourself or for others.
Right. That's a really big thing, is to be okay with being wherever you are in your space.
Right. I remember one time, Kim, you and I were talking, and I forget where you picked this up, but when you picked it up, it was like a moment, like a mind-blowing moment for you. And it was that somebody told you that instead of being an empathetic clinician, we need to be a compassionate clinician. Do you remember that?
I absolutely will always remember that.
Let's talk about that. Can we talk about that?
Well, yeah, because I think in my opinion, as a clinician who sits with people's stories, one of the things we hear all the time is, what do you do with all these stories? What do you do with all of this stuff? How do you hold on to all this stuff? And I think compassion gives us something to do with all of it, whether it's giving grace or giving validation or helping somebody move through something. It gives us something to do with all of the stuff that people bring in our office. And it gives it back to them to do things with too. So it feels more empowering than it does just kind of feeling like, oh, there's more stuff, you know?
Right.
Well, healing is active, right? And we have to do with it to find resolution.
Mm-hmm.
And Stephanie and I had a client one day in our group that said something that kind of floored me. I think you'll remember this, Stephanie. We both kind of looked at each other and we were both like, oh, okay, well, thanks. But I think Stephanie wrote on the board, sympathetic, empathetic, and compassionate. And one of the members of the group, and this was a trauma group, one of the group members said, oh, well, I don't like those first two words. I don't like when people feel that way towards me. And we were like, well, why? She said, because you have to be pathetic. Because it's the root of the sympathetic and the empathetic. She said, and it makes me feel that way when people come at me all like, oh, is it okay? You know, that she would rather have someone who's compassionate that was helping her move forward and stuff, you know, kind of actionable. And I'm not even saying that everybody feels that way at all. That's not even what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, for that particular person who experienced a lot of trauma, what she was asking for were tools to move forward, not for somebody to sit and hold space, but she needed somebody to actively help her.
To guide her.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Horn going off in the
I was just going to say, sorry if there's a horn going off.
There's a fly in my office. There's horns going on outside. I have aggressive jazz hands. It's a day.
I have a lot of empathy for you right now, though, because I'm hearing all of this other static in my office, and I can identify with what it is that you're doing, what's going on for you.
Right.
And I have compassion. I'm here with you.
Right.
And you're gonna like go outside and tell these people to shut up, which would be actionable, and I would appreciate it.
Right.
So yeah, I think, what's your final words?
I think my final words would be that I don't think a lot is known, or, you know, about that continuum between apathy, empathy, or apathy, sympathy, empathy, compassion. I think that we just gravitate towards one and call it, but there's really a continuum in it.
Yeah. What about you, Bally?
I would agree. I found that infographic a long time ago that had that little, you know, apathy, sympathy, empathy, compassion thing on it. And it was really cool because I think people recognize when they're in one, but don't understand when they're titrating and why they're titrating. Mm-hmm. And it's a really cool process to be part of, both, you know, individually and relationally.
Yeah. I think sometimes too, the beautiful part is not even, eventually, yes, you need to be intentional about where you are and with your relationships. Am I able to lean in here? Am I able to move into compassion and do something active? Where am I on that continuum? But I think one of the biggest gifts is just to see where you are on it and recognize where you are, and then work from that space. Don't try to sit down and show sympathy for somebody that you really don't feel much for. because
Mhm.
they're going to know. You know, don't try to be compassionate to somebody that you really can't find that compassion for them, because they're going to know. So it's being authentic in the space that you're in. And if you're not comfortable in that space, then being authentic and moving out of it into something else.
But movement happens.
It does. It does. Beautiful thing.
Hold on, wait for the siren to pass before you give our signing off final where you can find us info.
That's our like, hurry, hurry, urgent. Everybody listen, we're giving you good stuff now.
Yeah.
Siren.
It's like a sound effect board for free, you know, just outside. So we're done. Do a sign off?
I believe so.
All right. So thank you guys for tuning in to another weekly rendition of Flyleaf Talks About Stuff. You can find us on the internet at www.flyleafcounseling.com. Search us on Facebook by searching for Flyleaf Counseling, and we're also on YouTube by searching for Flyleaf Counseling in the search bar.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Signing off.
All right. Jazz hands.